Welcome back, everybody. It's the Betting Pros College Football Show. I'm your host, Scott Bogman. Follow me on the Twitter at Bogman Sports. I'm joined, as always, by Thor. Thor Nystrom. You can follow him on the Twitter at ThorKU. Coming off a big Kansas win. Kansas is one dub away, Thor, from meeting their season win total already. You've got to be pumped by your Jayhawks right now, right?
Oh, I was over the moon. Yeah, especially after earlier in the day, my Hawkeyes. Well, I went to grad school at Iowa, undergrad at Kansas. My Hawkeyes. Well, let's just not talk about that one. But the Kansas game that brought me all the way back. I had fallen into a depressive stupor, and then Kansas goes, into West Virginia and upsets them. What was awesome. That program's on the rise, and I think you're going to be getting your third win for everyone who has the over tickets on Kansas.
Yeah, it'll come at some point. Maybe
even this week. Yeah, maybe even this weekend. We'll see.
It could. We'll see. I know I like the over in that game for sure. But today up on the show, we're going to, of course, talk about the Friday games. Still no Thursday games. Thor and I mean, look, eventually we're going to get it. Maction and Wednesday and Thursday games and all week long. We kind of wish, in terms of viewing, this could all be like 2020 where there's games every single day, but it's just not the way it works early in the season. So we're going to get some Friday games. We're going to get some games that are running real heavy in terms of where the cash is. We're going to go over the top 5 games, and we're going to take a look at some of the games that Thor likes the line on. So let's start with the Thursday action here, Thor. Louisville on the road, or Louisville hosting FSU, FSU is a 2.5-point favorite over Louisville. The total is 56.5. Seems like you like Florida State in this game here, Thor. What is it about them that makes you be on the Seminoles here?
Yeah, it sucks we don't have any Thursday games this week, but having the 2 Fridays, and we're getting Louisville again. We saw them last Friday. They upset UCF coming off of in the first week. Louisville had no show at that game against Syracuse, had just gotten drop kicked. But yeah, last week they do upset UCF in the bounce house, and you have to give them respect for that. But neither of those teams looked very good. UCF had a very strange offensive strategy of trying to let John Reese Plumlee throw the ball a whole bunch. When John Reese Plumlee at his last stop, they had converted him to wide receiver. They didn't want him throwing the ball no more. And Gus Malzahn decided that's how he was going to try to beat this Louisville team with a better offensive strategy coming from Florida State. And Florida State, I think, matches up really well against this Louisville team for reasons we can talk about. I would lean Florida State. My line on that game is Florida State by 4.7. So I'm showing a little over 2 points of line value on the Seminoles. Florida State's a buy team for me. Louisville is a sell team. So this is a perfect marriage. I'm going to be on Florida State in that game.
The other team, or the other game that we have here, Wyoming against Air Force in Wyoming. Air Force, a 14.5-point favorite, 46.5 is the over here. I know you like Air Force. I'll say this for Wyoming, and maybe, Air Force, I believe they're located in Colorado, right? So maybe there's a little bit less of an effect for them going into Wyoming, but Wyoming, one of the best home field advantages in all of football because they are higher than Mile High, over 7,000 foot elevation at that stadium. A lot of teams come in there and get run out and gassed. So how do you see this game playing? Interesting Friday night matchup between Wyoming and Air Force.
Yeah, it's funny. Both my adjusted spread and my adjusted total are almost smack dab on where Vegas has them. Like
probably in a void then, huh?
Yeah, so I have Air Force minus 14.2, lines 15 on the total, 46.5 live. I have 44.5. But one interesting thing to note about the total, I am showing 2 points under, a value of 2 points to the under. One other thing is there's only, let me count quick. There's only 8 games this weekend that have where the forecast is calling for winds above 14 miles an hour. This is one of them. And so it's actually, I'm sorry. The stat I said before was correct, but I need to take it a little bit further. There's only 2 where of the totals, or 2 games where the projected wind is over 20 miles an hour. Ooh. And this game is one of them. So,
have you ever seen a Wyoming wind chime? It's just a chain. That's what they say in Wyoming because there's so much wind there. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, you talk about 20-mile-per-hour wind in a game where my system, just in a vacuum, even if the weather was perfect, was already 2 points under what the Vegas total is. We know, I mean, like the wind starts to statistically over the data affect offenses once it gets over like 12, basically, and 14 is where you start to see the against the spread numbers for the under start to cash above what you would think statistically. 20 is where it starts wreaking havoc on everything.
Yeah.
We're still several days away, so
Things
forecasters
can
are
change. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But
I'm learning that moving to Texas, Thor, because living in Arizona, they're just like, hey, it's going to be hot today. That's pretty much the forecast. In Texas, they're like, it might rain, it may not. Maybe it'll be windy. We're not sure. Figure it out. So it's much harder than it is in Arizona for sure.
yeah, you got a pace of play thing here where neither of these teams plays. They both like to play slow. They both want to run the ball. Air Force only wants to run the ball. Wyoming is heavily skewed in that direction as well. So you're going to have a running clock this entire game, and again, enormous amount of wins, which should not affect the run games as much, but it is going to wreak havoc on the passing games. Neither of the passing attacks, Air Force again doesn't try to throw the ball a ton, but Wyoming I think is going to have a lot of problems trying to do that. So I think they're going to be running the ball even more for all these different reasons. The play in this game for me, it's the under.
Yeah. If you're going to play anything, hit the under on that game. Let's go to the games with a significant amount of cash. Look, the over on the Florida State at Louisville game, 56.5 is getting hit up pretty big. Michigan laying 46.5 against UConn is getting a decent amount. Cincy laying 22 on the road against Miami, Ohio is getting a good chunk. Coastal Carolina minus 13.5 versus Buffalo, and Old Dominion minus 9.5 at UVA. I believe they're plus 9.5 at UVA is a big chunk as well. Are there any of that group? Because there's way more. I just want to start with those five though. Are there any of those that you like?
So I don't know that I'll bet the over in Florida State Louisville, but I would certainly lean that way. The adjusted total that we have on that game is 60.5. So did you say that was up to so it's 56.5 live. So I'm showing basically 4 points of value on the over. I also think at least Florida State, I'm pretty, we talked about that to start, but like the reason I'm super confident in Florida State being able to put up some real points in this game is because Louisville's run defense stinks. And the guy that they had signed in the transfer portal to try to address that, Jermaine Lowell from Arizona State, he's out for the year. So Louisville they're gonna have all kinds of issues defending Florida State's awesome rushing attack, which both with their Florida State's running backs and also, of course, Jordan Travis is great outside the pocket, super duper athletic. Another point on that is Florida State's offensive line has gotten significantly better. Last year, they were somewhere in the hundreds in PFF run blocking grade, like 110 or like something like that. They're up to like 26 or 27 already, despite the fact that they played LSU. LSU has a really good front. For whatever else you think of them, they have a really good defensive front. So Florida State's blocking really well. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. That over, though, it's probably going to come down to Malik Cunningham, and if they can get anything going through the air. The last game when they played UCF, where neither of the teams played very well, Louisville could not throw the ball, which they also couldn't in the first game. So we have not yet seen Louisville throw the ball effectively this year. They had lost Tyler Harrell over the offseason to Alabama. Brought in that Hudson kid, and then what was the other kid, Bruce Wiggins or whatever, the kid with the hyphenated name. They're still working it out with their receiving core, and Malik Cunningham has accuracy issues as is.
Yeah,
their offense had devolved in the last game to Malik Cunningham scrambling around. So if you're betting the over, you have to hope that Louisville is going to score enough points. But if you want to do a parlay in that game of Florida State minus 2.5 and then the over, I would not argue against you.
Any of those other games, Michigan, Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, or ODU getting points? You like any of those other ones?
I'm not on any of them, but the one interesting one was the Coastal Carolina Buffalo one. Because is that so? 95% of the tickets are coming in on Coastal Carolina. Is that what it is?
Cash. That's cash. Not
Oh,
ticket.
okay. Because there had been some steam moves earlier in the week on
That was
Buffalo.
as of like late Tuesday night too. So like, people will understand the later you get in the week, the more cash, the more tickets. So these
For sure.
should change a lot, but early it is Coastal for sure.
Yeah, Bogman, I forgot which game we were alluding to in the Discord that we just did, where it's classic pros versus Joe's matchup, and it's just so apparent when you're looking at the discrepancy between the money on the teams and then the percentage of tickets bought on both teams. This is the G5 version of that, where the
I think that
sharps.
was Syracuse Purdue on Discord. So
Yeah. But the Sharps are very clearly on Buffalo in this game, and the public is very clearly heavily on Coastal Carolina. And like the joke I said on there is, I want to be on the pro side of that.
yeah.
You're going to win more than you lose. I probably won't end up betting that one, but I do think it's important to note that the sharp bettors are sort of in mass on Buffalo in that game.
The next group of five games that we have here, Minnesota laying 27.5 versus Colorado, who's looked pathetic. Very high total on that one. Georgia Tech versus Ole Miss under 64.5 has got a big chunk. Wake Forest minus 16.5 against Liberty. Washington State versus Colorado State under 53.5, and Bowling Green versus Marshall under 52 has got a pretty big chunk. So anyone out of any game out of that group that you like there?
I I can't bet on that Minnesota Colorado game because that's a fair line. My
Yeah,
line is right in line with that. It's
too
within
close.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's too close. Colorado, I mean, like nobody was lower on Colorado than me coming into the season. I've said over and over and over again that Carl Durrell will not make it out of the regular season. He is Carl Durrell has entered his last weeks on the job, maybe month or whatever. But I do not believe that he will. He'll make the 12th game. I think they're going to win one game this year. They're certainly not going to beat the Gophers in Minnesota, but the Gophers they're fine just running the ball and letting the clock go if they know that they can control your offense. You saw a little bit of this when they played New Mexico State, where they knew they weren't in danger at all and they could just hold down New Mexico State's offense. They were just, it's just run, 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 run. You're going to see that here, where the result of this against the spread, against the spread result is going to be, it's going to be dependent on things that are sort of outside of your control. Both Minnesota's prerogative, and then just do they break any of those runs, or is it just evaporating the clock or whatever. So that one's a stay away for me. But you will not see me purchase a bet on or purchase a ticket on Colorado. That's a lie. I have significant money on the under 3 wins, but that was my last Colorado bet of the entire year. I think I'm going to cash that one. The Georgia Tech Ole Miss over under, that is right around my adjusted total as well. 64.5. I'm somewhere within like a point of that. So I probably won't be touching that one. I understand though why people are leaning the under. Ole Miss's totals are still a bit inflated because of people's memory of the past offense with Matt
Start
Corral.
doesn't look quite right yet. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the big part of it, right?
Yeah, they have questions at quarterback. There's been, some nagging injuries in the quarterback room already. The running back room, it seems like they're still figuring it out. Zach Evans has been getting the usage, but like behind him, it seems like Lane's still trying to figure out like how do I use the guys behind him, different stuff like that. I don't love their receiving core yet. It does have some flash players, but we'll have to see how it ends up coalescing. But the offense certainly is a bit down from where it's been the last couple of years, at least a step backwards. And then on the other side, we've seen Georgia Tech's offense enough at this point. Now the question isn't so much like how much are you going to score as how long does Sims keep his job? So you might see both these teams doing wonky stuff like that. I probably like if I had to bet it, I probably would bet the under, but I just don't see a ton of value on it. I do understand it. The Wake Forest Liberty game is very interesting to me, where last week we had Wake Forest opened as a 6.5 point favorite to Vanderbilt. That was before the news of Hartman came out. Then we got the news that Sam Hartman was going to come back. It was very unexpected because we had thought that Hartman was going to be out. Who knows? Maybe even for the whole season, maybe half the season. Nobody thought it was only going to be one game because of the way that Wake Forest had presented it to the public. So getting him back, that was sort of shocking. That line had then, toggled way up and, 12.5. I think it ended at 13.5, maybe even 14 by kick. I'm not sure. They look good against Vanderbilt. So you got sort of a proof of concept and a Vanderbilt team that they've improved a little bit. right? Like they're uh, uh,
They're
somewhat
better than they have
they're
been.
better than they have been. We'll, we'll,
Let's
we'll
just
just
say
we'll,
that.
we'll we'll
Yeah.
just leave it at that. So it wasn't like running over Colorado, for instance. But and then on the Liberty side, they're coming off of that upset win over UAB. One of my favorite plays of last week, where I didn't expect that offense to drop off at all. Any between losing Charlie Brewer, their starting quarterback, and then the freshman coming in, Salter, because Salter was a dual threat whose game evokes more Malik Willis, whereas Charlie Brewer is the complete opposite of that. That you would like if I had my like if you remove the context from all of it, I would probably lean towards Liberty on that one. The issue is last week they had that big upset over UAB. UAB, a team who's won their conference a bunch in recent years, has been one of the better G5 teams. You get that upset win. Now you're turning around. Is the effort going to be as good as it was last week, or is there going to be a slight deflation? We'll have to see on that, but that one's probably a stay away for me. Washington State now coming off of that big
I
upset
love
win.
this one.
Yeah, but
This is one of my favorite bets of the week, Thor. This under. Washington State has had nothing so far, but really, it's Colorado State that has done nothing. A team in transition, moving to a heavy pass with a roster that was run heavy. They had negative rushing yards last week, Thor,
oh
and I know
boy,
it's the sack yards, but
oh
I
boy,
did the math, and if you take away the yardage that they've lost for sacks, they go from 130th to 121st in rush yards.
yeah.
They don't take a big jump. So I love the under in this game. This
We,
looks like Patheticsville.
yeah, we talk, generally in sports betting, we talk about the wins and the losses. The one that really eggs me even more, eats at me even more than losses, it's missed opportunities. Last week, I was showing a 10-point discrepancy between what the Colorado State Middle Tennessee line was and what it actually was. Like my line in that game was like a pick 'em, and I think like in real life it was like Colorado State -10 or whatever.
Well, the
But
problem with that game is depending on Middle Tennessee.
well,
You don't
yeah,
want to do that, That's why you didn't take it, right?
I should, I should have just held my nose and jumped, but I didn't. Middle Tennessee ends up drop kicking Colorado State. The takeaway from that is this Colorado State team is really bad. It
Yeah.
quite bad. I mean, Middle Tennessee. The reason, like, I was having a really hard time with that was that they had looked so awful in their first game, and I'd been trying to sort of talk myself into some of the stuff with them because they were bringing in an air raid themselves. They seemed to have personnel that would suit it, whatever. But they did not look good in week one. But Colorado State is so bad that they were able to blow them out on the road. As far as the over under, yeah, I don't trust the Colorado State offense at all. If I was on the under, the one thing I'd be concerned about is that Clay Millen kid throwing pick sixes to Wazoo. We would have to make sure
Yeah.
that he ain't going to throw any of those. But like you mentioned, they can't run the ball. They do have one legitimate source of offense, but it's only one. It's forcing the ball to Torrey Horton. That kid is really good.
He is
And
good.
when he has the ball in his hands, he does damage. So if I'm Washington State, I've watched the tape of the first two games.
Double him.
We're doubling him. We're bracketing that guy. We're going to be watching him so close.
I think Dante
Entire
Wright
thing.
just went in the portal too, didn't he? So
Yeah, the other one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
and a
so
weird one where you do it after the first couple games. My adjusted total on the game is 52, so it is 1 point or whatever below the Vegas one. But we've talked about this in some of the past episodes. That's also baking in numbers from last year, stuff like that. This is a reconstituted Colorado State team. That was a bad team that was trying to run the ball outside of when they were forcing the ball to Trey McBride. This is a bad team that throws their throw first, and then they try to force it to Horton. But they're still both awful. Not going to be a good offense this year. And we saw Washington State last week go into Madison, Wisconsin, and they beat Wisconsin sort of at Wisconsin's own game. Like you would have thought, like if someone had told me before the game, hey Thor, guess what? I'm from the future. Wazoo is about to upset Yazoo. The first thing I would have done would have been hug them and been like, that's awesome. Thank you for telling me. The second thing I would have thought, well, Wazoo is gonna have to score a bunch of points. It's gonna be a weird game where like Cam Ward gets going and throws for a bunch of stuff, and then they're able to overcome
not a slog. Yeah,
exactly.
not the slog that it was. And how I
They
tell you,
played their game and beat them at it. It was
who feels the best about that is Nakia Watson, transferred from Wisconsin to
yeah.
Washington State, and
Amen.
gets to play his old team and get a W. The last five that we have here, Thor,
Yeah.
Memphis by 14 against Arkansas State, NC State versus Texas Tech over 55.5, Tennessee versus Akron under 67, FAU versus UCF -9, and South Florida plus the points 24.5 on the road in the swamp against Florida. I think these ones are probably harder overall to put your money on than the ones that I had before. Is there one that stands out above the rest in this group?
The Memphis Arkansas State game, we talked about this one on the Discord too, the side of it at least, where I have not bet this game yet, but I do lean pretty heavily towards Memphis because of the on-field matchup. Arkansas State, going back to the start of the Butch Jones era last year, they have been not only awful in general on defense, but particularly horrid at allowing explosive plays, both against the run and against the pass. On the other side, the Memphis team, I don't like a lot about the Memphis team, and I don't like their coach. He may survive into next year, but I don't think he's I don't think he's going to have a super duper long head coaching career.
Okay.
The Silverfield fella. But the one thing that they still do good is generate explosive plays. That goes back to their Norvell, the other Norvell in college football. But when Norvell was there, it was all the explosive running plays and stuff like that. And then they would open up explosive passing plays, like Paxton Lynch, you can think about in your mind, or who was the kid who was there for 20 years, Brady White or whatever. They were able to hit the downfield shots and stuff like that. This Memphis team can still generate explosive plays on offense. So I think that they're going to put up a lot of points on Arkansas. The referendum on if that game gets over, you got to hope that Arkansas State can do stuff against Memphis's secondary, because Arkansas State can't run the ball. They love to throw it, though. They have the Florida State transfer in James Blackman. They have a couple of decent receivers, too. So it's just going to come down to how well can they chip in 21, 24 points to this thing? Then we're probably getting there. If they get held below that, it's going to be a problem. But I don't love Memphis's defense. So I probably would lean over on that the same way that I lean Memphis minus the points.
All right, let's go to the top 5 games of the week, the games that everyone wants to watch here. And we're going to start out against number 24, Texas A&M -5, hosting Miami. The total on this game is 44, Thor. This is a weird game. Miami looked flat, especially in the first half last week. Maybe, big party school, early game, opponent you don't take seriously. I'm gonna add up a couple pieces here and say maybe they were tired from the night before. We'll be nice and say it that way. A&M loses at home to App State, pays them $1.5 million to come into their stadium and beat them. Best part of the day for me last Saturday for sure, outside of winning some cash. But what do you think of this game here, Thor? Do you have a lean?
Yeah, it was either that or what I think that was with Miami was just the first 2 games they haven't played. It was the FCS team and then Southern Miss last week, and Southern Miss was without their starting quarterback. So Miami knew that all they had to do was just the defense could just basically roll out there. Southern Miss wasn't going to score on them, and then Miami could just do whatever on offense. And Van Dyke made a couple bad decisions with the ball, but they still. I mean, we're being kind of nitpicky because they still won. What was it, like 31-7 or 38-7 or something like that? A&M's performance obviously was
30-7 because
30
the spread was 24.5. That's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as coming into this game, you have the thing with A&M where, of course, last week you lose to Appalachian State. A&M did have a higher win expectancy. They had like a 65% post-game win expectancy. Doesn't really matter with the results on the field, but it worth noting at least. But beyond the result of that game, I'm concerned about several things on the A&M roster. Super concerned about their quarterback play. They do not appear to have a legitimate, even solid P5 starting quarterback. Haynes King is not it. Max Johnson, his former staff didn't really seem to care that he was leaving. Didn't seem like when Brian Kelly comes in. Doesn't seem like Brian Kelly was trying too hard to keep Max Johnson there. He's one of the backup options. The only other kid they got, he is a 5-star kid, but he's a true freshman just out of high school, and Connor Wiegman. So they can pull the plug on Haynes King and they're thinking about it because Jimbo Fisher refuses to acknowledge so far who's going to be starting on Saturday. So you might see a new guy, but do you go to Johnson? Do you go to the green kid? Who knows? You have
You
that.
go somewhere else. I know that. So
I wouldn't start Haynes King again, but that's just me. The running game, they have missed Isaiah Spiller more than I thought they would. Because I thought between Odchain, Odchain was better throughout his career per touch than Spiller, but of course it was on less usage, right? And he would come in and then he would provide explosive plays. You could move him all over the place and you get him on the perimeter. He'd outrun people. One of the fastest players in college football. And I was thinking without Spiller, yeah, Achane's going to have to assume more of the carries, but then you have all these 5-star running backs coming in. You can basically piece together as productive a running back room, or maybe even more. But right now, so far, it has not been that way.
yeah.
Achane did have the long kick return touchdown in the last game, but like as far as like having to tote the rock and like kill the clock and in instances where you need to let the defense rest on the sidelines, they have struggled with that so far. A&M has, so their running game is definitely down. Their passing game is down, and I think their secondary stinks. They have not been good against two. Well, I'm not going to call Appalachian State bad, but your first two games you play an FCS team in Appalachian State, and you've gotten ripped.
You haven't played a P5 team yet. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so now that secondary, which hasn't looked so good so far, and has been allowing a lot of separation to receivers that were 2-star recruits or low 3-star recruits, or maybe even no-star recruits. Now they're going up against Miami, who has a lot of athleticism on the perimeter. They have an NFL prospect at quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke, who has a big league arm, should be able to stretch, A&M deep down the field and stuff like that. And then Miami can run the ball now. Henry Parrish was a great find in the transfer portal. They sort of pilfered him from Lane Kiffin when Lane Kiffin was looking elsewhere, bringing in a bunch of running backs. Parrish has looked great in the first few games. I think Miami matches up decently well against A&M's defense. That would be the thing that would normally concern you. And then on the other side, if Miami is up, they do get up, and A&M is forced into a position of having to throw. Miami's pass rush is really good. I mentioned that Haynes King and all those, like, we of course don't believe in them, but especially when those Miami edge rushers are just allowed to tee off, that is a bad scenario for A&M. If you're going to lay this many points on A&M, you have to be pretty confident that they're going to jump out to like a double-digit lead, and then they can just do the kill the clock thing.
Yeah,
other game scripts are not good for laying this many points. My line in this game is only A&M minus 1.3. I definitely like Miami.
Yeah, I'm with you on Miami. Don't know if I'll take him after they disappointed me last week, but we'll see. The only other ranked on ranked, that was 13 versus 24, Miami versus Texas A&M. The only other ranked on ranked matchup we have here is number 25 Oregon, 3.5-point home favorites against number 12 BYU. The total is 57.5 here. What do you think of this game, Thor?
This is a really hard one to get your finger on for a couple different reasons. My line, so one of the reasons I was interested in it was because my line was showing real value on BYU. I think it was I have BYU minus 1.5. Live, it's Oregon minus 3.5. So you're showing like 5 points of line value theoretically on BYU across the threshold there. And so I am still thinking about betting BYU. I'm not going to be betting on Oregon. Oregon, who looked terrible in the opener against Georgia, and then last week they played an FCS team. So it's like we still don't really know what we have, because first game you play one of the two best teams in the nation. Next game you don't play anybody. We'll see what we get out of them. Remember, they have the new coaching staff. Now they're quarterbacked by Bo Nix, and stuff like that. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I would prefer BYU, except for one thing. And this is what has stopped me from betting on this one so far. And the reason why I'm waiting to monitor the status, both of their receivers missed last week's game against Baylor. Their top, two guys, Puka Nacua, who not only you give them a bunch of usage in the passing game, they also give them a bunch of the end arounds and jet sweeps, stuff like that. He's a big part of every offensive game plan that he's a part of. And then Gunnar Romney. So they are severely compromised at the receiver position. BYU has not updated their status yet. They haven't said one way or the other if they're going to play in this game, if they're not going to play in this game.
Annoying. They don't have to, so they're not going to say it. So
exactly. Yeah. BYU was able to sneak by Baylor without them. They needed overtime to do it, but they were able to outlast Baylor. Can they do it again on the road in Eugene if they don't have either of those guys? That might be a bridge too far coming off the win that they just had. But if you get both those guys back, and now all of a sudden Jaron Hall has weapons again, I actually like BYU's talent more than I like Oregon's talent. Like I think this BYU team is really solid, but Oregon's they should be a solid team. So
Yeah.
like we'll just have to see about the status of those two guys. But if I was thinking about betting this game, anyone out there, you got to check on the status of those two BYU receivers first.
I still think Oregon could be really good. It's just Georgia is leaps and bounds better than anybody else by a wide
For sure.
margin, in my opinion. The other three games, those are the only ranked on ranked games. The other three games that we have that I put on the list in terms of top five, I got Washington is a 3.5-point home favorite against number 11 Michigan State. The over/under is 56.5 on that one. Auburn against Penn State. Penn State is a road favorite at number 22 at -3, 46.5 is the over in that game. So a low total there. And then I couldn't really figure out the fifth one. I put number one Georgia on the road against South Carolina as 24-point road favorites. 52 is line in that one. I still like Georgia in that game. I think out of this group, that's the one I'm most confident in out of all three of these. Do you have a good lean on any of those three games, Thor?
Well, the Michigan State Washington one is really interesting because my line is basically flipped the exact opposite way. Like I got
You
Michigan.
got the ranked team favored. Yeah.
Yeah. And not only that, so I'm showing value on the Spartans, but not only that, it would seem like the Spartans actually match up pretty decently here. Their offensive line is really good. Of course, they lost Kenneth Walker, right? But the offensive line is really good. Again, in fact, I'm looking at the PFF metrics right now. Right, we're early in the season, so take it with a grain of salt. But Michigan State is right now number one in the country in PFF run blocking grade, and they are way up there in the pass blocking too. They're number 13. So they have been able to do it in the trenches. You have experience coming back at the quarterback position. They haven't passed the ball as well early on, but you do sort of trust Thorne. We've seen them do it. And then Washington, their run defense hasn't looked the best so far, at least. And they haven't been super duper tested by anyone or whatever. But in comparison to the opponents that they were playing, I understand the optimism on Washington for sure. Going from Jimmy Lake, who, he wouldn't know offensive football if it hit him in the face, to now going to Caleb DeBoer, who wherever he has gone, even Indiana or like whatever, like he always has the explosive offense or Fresno or like whatever. So I definitely get that. And now you got Michael Penix, whereas before you didn't trust your quarterback, stuff like that. Now they can move the ball, but this line does seem suspiciously juiced in the favor of Washington. So suspiciously that I have not touched it yet, even though I do think that Michigan State matches up well. If you just look at like that, and then also I'm showing value on them. It's one that I'm going to keep handicapping through the end of the week before I make a decision one way or the other. But a weird line for me. Weird line.
All right. Let's go to your leans, Thor. We've got Indiana -6 against WKU. You like the other side of that game. Iowa State is laying 17.5 against Ohio. That might not be enough. You like Notre Dame and lay the 10 against Cal. Wisconsin maybe as a huge line against New Mexico State, but they've got nothing. They're -37. Tennessee is -47 versus Akron. Maybe that's too much. And Pitt -10 at Western Michigan may not be enough too. Do you have out of that group of games that you have good leans on, Thor? Do you have a couple favorites out of there?
For sure. Yeah. Western Kentucky, they might be on the top of the list. My adjusted line's all the way the other way, where I have Western Kentucky favored, even though, the line live is Indiana. You said 6. Last thing I had seen was 6.5, but whatever it is, I think in a vacuum, Western Kentucky is probably the better team. And I also think that they match up really well here. Because Indiana, the thing that they've stunk at early in the season, it's defending the pass. They allowed Tommy DeVito to rip them up. That was like the fourth highest passing output total that Tommy DeVito had over his entire career. Certainly the most that he's had this year. Last week, Indiana plays Idaho at home. Idaho, a team that is now 4-9 in the FCS, not FBS, FCS, since the start of last season. Idaho was up on them 10-0 at halftime. Indiana had to come back to win the game. But Idaho's quarterback was doing whatever he wanted to do. He averaged 9 yards per pass, threw for 3 touchdowns. You have to have serious questions about Indiana's ability to defend the pass and their secondary in general. Well, that's what Western Kentucky wants to do, is throw the ball, and they want to spread you as wide as they possibly can, and then just attack spaces. Right, Western Kentucky, the quarterback's down for sure. Bailey Zappi gone, of course. Now they have this Austin Reed kid. First 2 games up from the D2 level, mixed bag. I mean,
Yeah.
he hasn't been an embarrassment, but mixed bag. Western Kentucky did win both those games. They were both against poor opponents. So this is going to be really interesting seeing him play a Big Ten defense and how he does. But he averaged like 275 yards a game, even though they were barely throwing. Once it got to like 20 minutes left, because both of them, like I said, were blowouts, so that they were running more at the end. But they would seem to match up well there, and especially because Western Kentucky has a really, really good receiving core. Not only at the top, they're loaded there, but all the way down. They have one of the G5's best receiving cores. I find it really hard to believe that Indiana is going to be able to go body for body with them across the formation. Their secondary against Western Kentucky's receivers. And then again, I'm showing line value on Western Kentucky as well. The other thing, sort of sneaky, Western Kentucky's coming off of a bye.
Yeah.
So to me, there's a lot of things that are pointing at Western Kentucky. I would definitely lean towards the Hilltoppers.
Any other games out of that group that you like?
Just quick hitting. I am showing line value theoretically on Iowa State. My line was 24.7. The live line is 17.5, but I'm not going to touch that one. Iowa State just had that. Basically a barroom brawl of a game. It's just like them and Iowa were just in a phone booth, just rock 'em, sock 'em with each other. And Iowa State ends up pulling it out. All their young players and everything in Kinnick Stadium. So a huge win for them. And now you have to turn around and play this Ohio team. Are they really going to take Ohio seriously? Are they really going to have the same effort that they did? Because of the deflation theory, coming off that last one, you have to downgrade Iowa State a bit. So I can't touch that one. I can also tell you, I know sharp money's on Ohio in that game. But I don't want any part of Ohio, only getting 17 now. So I ain't touching that one. I do like Notre Dame -10 against Cal. I don't care that Buckner's not playing. Buckner hadn't even been good this year. I'm not convinced that it's a down. This is going like the Liberty thing with Brewer to Salter. I'm not convinced that Notre Dame has downgraded a quarterback from Buckner to Pine. I realized that Buckner was the much higher ballyhooed kind of recruit, but Pine is more like he'll evoke Ian Book a little bit more. I think he's sort of a pint-sized guy, but he makes smart decisions. I think he has a 3-to-1 career TD/INT ratio, whereas Buckner is throwing a decent amount more interceptions and touchdowns at this point. I think you don't get quite the arm strength or the athleticism, of course, with Pine, but I think he can do a better job of just keeping the offense within the rails. And hopefully then the coaching staff can have a more definitive kind of game plan heading into those games. Because it seemed like they wanted Buckner to do way too much too, even though he hadn't proven anything yet. Like he was getting a lot of the rushing usage as well and yada, yada. I didn't love that. So I think, there's a theory here where Notre Dame is, you don't want to say better off, but where they're not going to drop off like people think they're going to. And I don't like Cal either. Cal's beating an FCS team. They only beat UNLV last week by 6. So I'm kind of confused that they're getting that much credit.
They bow up and play well, but when they do, it's usually against another Pac-12 opponent. It's not, it ain't going to be Notre Dame. I think I'm with you in this game too. But Thor, we did it. I think we're ready for week 3 now. Remember, you can follow him on the Twitter at ThorKU. And please, Thor, once again, remind everyone about the schedule. Lay it out for everybody so I know where to find all your great work on Betting Pros.
Yeah, check out my show on Sundays with Thomas, where we go over the lines like right when they come out. Like the Vegas line against my numbers for the coming week gives you buying opportunities there. Games you can get in on early and then get a big line discount. In comparison to what it'll be on the Saturday. Of course, me and my friend Bogman over here, this show, and then also we do a Discord immediately before it, which is at 5 p.m. Eastern, I think, on Wednesday
nights. And that's free for anybody. Yeah.
Free for anybody.
Wednesday, just if you can come and sign up and be a part of the Betting Pros Discord, and for anybody, you don't have to be a premium subscriber, and you can jump in there and talk to us. We would love to answer your questions. So please come join us. It's a lot of fun.
We had some great questions today. It was good stuff. And people should definitely check that out, because we're there for an hour. We're live, and we will answer literally every question that people have. Like if you put your hand up, we will call you up and we will answer your question. So definitely check that out. I have the kickoff show with Mike Farrell on Saturday mornings at 10 p.m. East. I try to put the times into Eastern or 10 a.m. Eastern, where we go for 90 straight minutes, breaking down as many games as we possibly can, sides, totals, props, the whole deal. And then coming out later this week, in fact, I'm going to be submitting it here in the next hour, is my top 10 favorite bets for the weekend. So check that out on Betting Pros.
Awesome. And you can find me, of course, here with Thor every single Wednesday, like we talked about on the Discord. I believe the show comes out on Thursdays as well. So check us out here. And I'm doing IDP with Joe Pisapia right now. That comes out on Thursday as well for Fantasy Pros. And I will be on there every Wednesday night doing Stages After Dark on the Fantasy Pros Discord and CFP Winning Edge with Nick and Xavier. Talks college football, of course, all my fantasy stuff over in this league as well with the Welsh. So at Bogman Sports, you can find all the great stuff I'm doing over there. It's a lot of fun and enjoy it. And we will see you guys. Good luck in week 3. We will see you next week. Take it easy, everybody.